Hello, hello, folks. Welcome, welcome. Alex, hi. Jonathan, Jaffer is here as well as Katie. Good evening, good evening. Thank you so much for joining in. We'll be a small group. I think Donna is trying to log in as well. Anyways, anybody else making travel decisions closer to home and not actively choosing to not as much as possible within reason? The one thing in the points world or in the travel world in general is very difficult to completely disengage. Much like in the grocery store as well, you could choose your products, but you don't always know how many times that product may have been sort of. I'll give you an example. We have been and we try and buy as much local as possible, but now, in the last few months, at least since December, it has been like hardcore intentional buying local, buying Canadian only, that kind of thing, as much as we can. Recently bought some blueberries, which were a product of Mexico. So we bought it and then realized that the company is a US company just growing its blueberries in Mexico. So there's so many of those examples that you can't have an absolute sort of you can't make an absolute decision and unplug yourself from that economy. And to be honest, trade was meant to be like that, meant to be easy. That things are flowing between the three countries, Mexico, U.S., and Canada, back and forth, and it's for the betterment of everybody. I mean, you folks know this. I don't know why I'm trying to give you a trade lesson here, but what I mean to say is travel is likely very difficult as well to completely unplug yourself from the US economy per se, or from US vendors, from US companies, US airlines, hotels, and everything else. So it's very difficult that way. So if you are like me, choosing to sort of spend more locally, more Canadian, uh, don't beat yourself up when it comes to travel. Do as much as you can to sort of support local and support Canadian vendors, but in the points and the travel industry, things can be more than tricky. So yeah, just don't beat yourself over it if that's what you've been doing, because I've been talking about this entire points thing and doing things locally, not spending my tourism dollars in the US and doing something more international, if you will, or doing it closer to home. And friends have shared the anxiety around, oh, what if United is X amount cheaper than Air Canada? What can I do? Or how do you break yourself away from a Marriott program, which is a US company? They're the only ones with credit cards here in Canada. There's just so much to it. So if like some of my friends, if you're beating yourself up, just a gentle reminder, be gentle to yourself. You are making all of these difficult decisions as an individual, which are great, which are honorable, but don't beat yourself over it. So it's difficult. So a couple of changes we made was because Donna mentioned camping, I was looking at some glamping spots, and Hyatt has a great partner. What do they call it? Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the partnership with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's almost like a partnership within a partnership. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith has some really good glamping spots because they sort of have taken up this company called Under the Canvas, I think. Again, it's an independent company that runs glamping options in several national parks and state parks in the US. So I was really hoping, and they are part of Mr. and Mrs. Smith portfolio, who are now under the Hyatt brand. So you are able to use your Hyatt points and whatnot, and even earn points if you go there. So, anyways, long story short, this summer I was really hoping to be able to try them out. All of their properties, I think all of their really good properties are in the US. Unfortunately, we decided against it because we were going to do something different and away from the US this year. So, much like many other years that we've done over and over, we'll be doing a different part of the East Coast this time, just a trip, like a car trip or drive trip for 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever. And we'll look at our camping options there. For some of you that have followed me over the years on social media, a couple of years ago, I did that like a almost like a not a glamping, but it was like a container stay, like a container which is now an Airbnb out in Nova Scotia, like shipping container. which is super swanky, nice, and very different from a hotel stay. So yeah, we were right by the water, and the shipping container turned into an Airbnb spot. Super nice. We loved it. Probably go back and try something like that, or different. Airbnb has done a great job of having those camping, glamping sort of options up top. So we like using some of those as well to filter and see what's available closer to us. So yeah, there's several of these options. So that's just another example of how I was fixated towards trying a particular company under Canvas. And then once we decided that we are not going to be doing that and spending our dollars in the US, immediately started looking at equivalent options here in Canada. And turns out there is quite a few just locally here within Canada. So we'll be doing those instead. Donna goes on to say, traveling in Vietnam, Cambodia for February, been in has been interesting conversations with various Americans and other Canadians we've met over the last 3 weeks. Oh yeah, you're there right now, but it is what it is, and we move on. We try and do what we can within the scope of our influence, and we go from there. Alex says Vietnam banh mi sandwiches. I could not get enough. Yeah, banh mi are so addictive, and there's just so many. There's no one kind of banh mi. Pork being the obvious traditional one, but there's so much Vietnam does with those banh mi sandwiches. I think I ate up to three some days. So delicious, and yes, I know there are other good food, but the banh mi was addicting. Hey, if you ask me one, like I mean, let's say the quintessential Vietnamese quote unquote food, uh, banh mi, pho, bun cha, and things like that, I would pick banh mi any day of the week. Multiple times, I can just have different styles and different kinds of banh mi sandwiches, and that would be like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, the bread is so good, says Donna. Agreed. Use of it. The other piece, and this news kind of started off as, oh yeah, great, good route, kind of off that they're doing it here, and I started digging, and it sort of took me by surprise, and I want to see if it took you by surprise as well, or if it's just one of those things that was such a blind spot for me that now I'm excited to learn what I've learned. WestJet announced a new route earlier in the week. They are now going to be flying Halifax to Amsterdam direct on their 737 MAX 8 aircraft, and starting May 29th, 6 times a week. And when I first read that, I'm like, oh yeah, WestJet does fly a couple of flights direct into Europe out of Halifax. So this will be in addition to that. But little did I know that my blind spot was so blind that I learned that, hey, Halifax is a much bigger hub for transatlantic flight than Ottawa, nation's capital, which only has two, London and Paris. Uh, get this, Amsterdam will be the fifth European gateway from WestJet, for WestJet from Halifax. And that's just WestJet flying out of Halifax to European destinations. So yeah, they are really continuing to build their presence out of Halifax with direct flights and this I didn't know, Edinburgh, London Gatwick, Dublin, Paris. These are all direct flights out of Halifax going into Europe on WestJet. And then they also have other transatlantic flights out of Halifax, which include sort of London Heathrow with Air Canada. They have one that goes to Frankfurt with Discover Airlines, who I think are now partners with Aeroplan, if you wanted to use your points with them. And they also have flights going direct from Halifax to Reykjavik, Iceland on Iceland Air. And I was just blown away when I suddenly sat back and thought, huh, Halifax, who knew? So if you are listening in from out east or anywhere close to Halifax, guess what? You should be investing in a couple of those RBC WestJet cards to get your earn and burn game going. I mean, Halifax seems to be one of those spots that I kind of knew that they have a couple of destinations more than Ottawa, but then I was blown away with how many European destinations WestJet covers out of Halifax, in addition to the couple that I thought I knew about, the Frankfurt and London routes out of Halifax. So yeah, fantastic gateway that doesn't get as much sort of mention or hype from this points community. And I know why, because all of us are looking for lie flat seats and all of that, and not all of their flights, for example, the Discover, the Discover Air or Edelweiss. Somebody mentioned good niche route is Edelweiss Air to Zurich on the A340. They don't always all have flatbed seats like the 737 that WestJet is going to be flying on their MAX 8s to Amsterdam won't have flat seats. So I understand why the points community doesn't talk about Halifax a whole lot. But hey, great hub to use your points, especially if you were in a pinch and just wanted to get out somewhere. The availability might even be better out of Halifax than trying to find something direct out of Toronto, for example, during certain times of the year. So yeah, Iyad, what was the news recently? Are they moving all of their 737s to Rouge? Yeah, I think that's the news, right? So all of the 737s are now going to be Rouge flights, which is good, which means other aircrafts will take the mainline Air Canada routes. Iyad says, and yes, Halifax in the summer has tons of flights to Europe, including some European airlines, but again, summer only. Yeah, that's true. A lot of their summer flights are sort of May to October kind of thing, but hey, that's a great window to book something and get out if you wanted to. Grimsley is here. Grimsley says, use all of your WestJet dollars and product switch. Hayden is here. I think Hayden, if it's really you, hello. Sarah, if it's you, hello as well. It's a narrow body. That's why you should avoid Max, in my opinion, says Sarah. So yeah, that took me by surprise because I had no clue how many WestJet direct flights to Europe were running out of Halifax. And to be honest, here in Ottawa, Halifax is like right there, almost equidistant, not equidistant because Halifax is an hour and a half flight. Ottawa to Toronto is an hour less, slightly less than an hour. So not equidistant, but it's right there. So if I had to hop and jump to Europe back and forth in a pinch, that might be a good one to look at. Okay, so that was our talk about WestJet and everything they're doing out of Halifax. The other fun news for me, particularly, I hope you find it equally fun, was Porter has partnered with Saint Andre, Saint Andre, yeah, Saint Andre from Quebec City or Montreal. If somebody wants to check if Saint Andre coffee, sorry, I should first tell you what it is before I start yapping about it further. They've partnered with Saint Andre coffee makers for in-flight coffee, which I can tell you this, Priya reminded me that the last time we were in Quebec City, which is late fall, I think, that we had picked up a whole bunch of their coffee beans for use at home. And I didn't realize because I don't pay too much attention to coffee brands and the brand of beans that come into our household. No, not because I'm a ignorant household being. It's just because coffee to me is just coffee. You give me any coffee from Tim Hortons to McDonald's to Starbucks to Nespresso to anything. I'm just like, oh, it's coffee, and I'll just drink coffee. To me, I'm not a coffee connoisseur, is basically what I mean. So, anyways, Saint Henri Porter, great Canadian partnership, which popped another WestJet thing in my mind. I was like, hey, remember when WestJet was serving McDonald's coffee on their flights? Does anybody know if WestJet is still serving McDonald's coffee in flight? I would love to know. I couldn't find any information about it. I just quickly looked it up, and I just remembered back like pre-pandemic at some point, WestJet had started serving McDonald's coffee, which, by the way, if I really had to pick between Tim Hortons and McDonald's, I love McDonald's coffee now, and I'm assuming everybody knows the story behind it, right? Like when Tim Hortons got bought over by Wendy's, not Burger King. Apologies. Wendy's bought Tim Hortons, and Wendy's took over the entire supply chain. That entire supply chain that was ditched from Tim Hortons was bought in by McDonald's Canada. So McDonald's Canada coffee is the same kind of from the same coffee suppliers that used to serve Tim Hortons before the buyout from Wendy's. So, anyways, that's the story, which is why suddenly people that used to love Tim Hortons coffee have now found out that, hey, look, that coffee that I used to love so much is now available at McDonald's, and McDonald's coffee has been doing great. So I've had McDonald's coffee a few times, and I actually like their coffee. It's not the harsh, burnt, rancid coffee. It's nice and smooth, and it's really good. But anyways, the point of this thing was Porter has St. Andre partnership, which is a great coffee brand here out of either Quebec City. We bought ours in Quebec City or Montreal. I think it's one of the, it's a Quebec company. Great partnership. I'm looking forward to having that coffee in flight when next I fly Porter. But if somebody knows what coffee WestJet is still serving, that would be amazing. Oh, Greg has already answered that. Greg says yes, still McDonald's. That's amazing. That's like one good thing about WestJet that continues, I suppose, the McDonald's coffee. Air Canada continues to be Lavazza, if I'm not mistaken. WestJet, McDonald's. And now Porter is St. Andre, which is great. Great coffee selection amongst Canadian airlines, which is fun. Sarah says, I wish Air Canada would bring back their daytime flight to Heathrow 9 a.m. Oh, I do have an Air Canada flight out of Ottawa with the what I love to call the beloved 888, I think is the flight number. But I think you're right, that's the evening. Almost all of those flights used to be evening out of Ottawa as well and continue to be evening flights. Yep, 9 p.m. flight. Yeah, I wish there was a day flight. Most of the day flights are coming in from Europe into North America, and North America going into Europe. Very few flights are day flights, even out of the US, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Um, Alex says Brazilian company, I think, and we're talking back to the coffee chain. Restaurant Brands International, I think, is saying Grimsley. That's the name of the chain that used to supply coffee into Tim Hortons, who are now supplying to McDonald's. Greg says, I could be wrong. They definitely don't give out the McDonald's stickers to those who collect. I'm sure they're not giving out McDonald's stickers. Did they ever give out McDonald's stickers? I'm talking as if I know what these stickers are, but I'm assuming it's one of those. Oh yeah, McDonald's, the Monopoly thing, right? Isn't there a McDonald's Monopoly? Is that the sticker you're talking about? I don't go to McDonald's as often. I've done a few coffees every now and then, but I'm not a big McDonald's person. Sarah says we are back to talking about London flights. There used to be one daily 9 a.m. from Toronto, stopped by COVID, never came back. Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure how many of these COVID flights that went away have come back. I mean, it would be good to ask that question when we see the executives next, is in terms of how much of it has come back, how much of it is going to come back, if at all, like what the big plans are for product. Particularly would be nice. Greg says, no, the coffee collector stickers, 5 stickers and redeem a free coffee or hot chocolate. Okay. So not the Monopoly thing. Was Monopoly ever a thing, or am I just making shit up about McDonald's? Anyways, things that I don't know about and I feel compelled to talk about. This is just one of those. I have no clue what the sticker business is, but I keep making silly guesses. Yeah, so that was my coffee thing from last week, which got some conversation in our household because I was reminded that we have been to St. Andre or we've had St. Andre coffee and that we bought these beans just not very long ago, and we actually like it. Apparently, I like it because I've been served that coffee at home, and without knowing, I've enjoyed that coffee a lot. So there's that. I wanted to ask everybody that joins in today. So I realized that a few months ago, well, I realized recently that a few months ago, I was supposed to make some spend on my Amex Platinum card to get that additional bonus for making that spend between month 13 and is it month 14 to 17? And I completely missed that window on a card that I don't actively use. Well, not actively use, but just don't use enough to have that kind of spend going in. So yeah, unfortunately, I missed out on that. And then that made me sort of go scouring and looking at other cards that I have in my wallet that may have that kind of thing where the additional bonus is tied to spend in month 13, month 14 to 17, or whatever the case might be. What do you guys do to remember all of these cards that you get and when those timelines are? How do you peg those? Is it just one of those where while activating the card, you're putting reminders for yourself right away? Is it on your Excel sheet? Because I've clearly been super bad at it and I've missed now 2 cards in the last 1 year that required some sort of activity after the annual fee came through. So I was thinking, oh, maybe that should be my mental marker when I look at the statement and whatnot. I see an annual fee, then I should know that, hey, there could be something to it. But oh man, I felt bad because I think the platinum was 25,000 additional points. I think that's what it was. And then the reserve one also has it, but then I have at least one of my reserves is coming up. So I marked that down. But yeah, if you have other tips for me, that would be much appreciated. Not something I've run into too much, but now that I've realized I've missed two cards or two bonuses on two cards, that I would like to keep. These cards are going to be with me for business and personal use, so I should have used them. But hey, uh, yeah, that's what I thought I was doing. Yeah, it says I stopped using Excel sheets and just base it off vibes. Um, but I also haven't gotten any cards that have the month 14 bonuses. Yeah, I thought I was going to be, savvy enough to remember these things when the annual fee hit the card. It'll kind of trigger that, ooh, annual fee came through, so I should be making some spend, or I should have some particular kind of spend that needs to go on this card. Totally botched up. Leon says, "Yep, calendar reminder as soon as I get the card." Yeah, that's what I should have done. Greg says, "My wife sets a Google Calendar reminder, works well for her, for sure." Alex says, "I use Excel and put a reminder in my phone, especially 6 weeks before the last cutoff, just in case I miss it. I have a full statement to hit it." Yeah, good point, Alex. That the reminder should be a few weeks before the absolute last cutoff, or at least at the start of that 13 or 14-month counter, so that you have some time to hit it and you're not sort of pushed to make a substantial amount of spend in a very short amount of time and hope that your statement captures it. Iyad says, but sometimes I use a reminder on iPhone with something like spend 1,000 on X card this month. Yeah, I've done those too. Amex offers, although Amex is becoming better, especially the US ones, are becoming better at constantly pinging you to remind you that you have an Amex offer that's expiring. They have started sending these email reminders about Amex offers that your card is registered for well in advance. Like I have a few, at least a couple airline ones. The Iceland Air one that I had on my US card, which was spend 1,500, get 250 back. And then there was a Virgin Atlantic one, which was something similar, spend 1,800, get 250 back, or something like that. And they don't expire until end of March. And they have been sending me reminders about those things since like January or even earlier this month. So yeah, they're getting better at sending reminders. But those would be the other ones that I sort of sign up for or register my card for, and I kind of forget. I've missed out on so many of those because during the pandemic years, remember when every hotel chain, every airline wanted to send you something through Amex offer, and I would register, and then totally forget. Speaking of Amex offers, I'm finally, and remember I said this entire thing about not going to the US or trying to fly as much Canadian or trying to go to places as much as possible in Canada is difficult, is because I had these United credits that I had been pushing off by sort of, I'd booked them and then canceled so that I kept the credit for future travel. All of those dates were coming up. So I have a couple of these May dates coming up for my future travel credits with United. So I've just finished booking a trip to Mexico City just so that I'm able to use that travel credit that I had, because obviously the travel credit that I have is quite a bit more than what the actual Amex offer was for. So I had like $1,500 sitting in that. A couple of them actually $1,500 times two is what I had sitting in two separate travel credits. So I'm using one on my way to Australia, and then I'm using the other one for Mexico City. Yeah, things like that. It'd be great to sort of, if I was regimented enough that every time I registered something like this, that I would go and add a reminder or a note. But yeah, they need to do a little bit better. I mean, like I said, Amex US is becoming better in that they're incessantly reminding you about these registrations you've made much or well in advance. So I appreciate that. Speaking of this Icelandic Air and Virgin Atlantic, any way people know any way to use those credits for future? with these two airlines, kind of like United. Like United is amazing. I may have asked this question before. I have no experience with Virgin Atlantic or Iceland Air for that matter, but I would love to keep those credits for future travel purposes. United does such a good job of allowing you to, if you cancel anything, allowing you to keep that as a future travel credit in your wallet. But I don't think either of these airlines have a wallet per se. So unless I really wanted to fly on their metal and spend money on these airlines. Unfortunately, this might be one of those where I've just registered and I won't use my uh, travel credit or won't use my Amex offer towards Virgin Atlantic or Iceland Air. But if you found a way to use it, please ping me, DM me, put it on Discord. We'll have a good chat around it. Um, should we talk about dynamic pricing and things? And again, this would be more of you telling me what are some of the things that you do. But before we go there, I did have something that I came across. They were discussing this on a radio show. I was driving somewhere and they were discussing this on the radio about sort of like a cautionary tale against using buy now, pay later options for travel. So, companies like you may have heard of these companies, Klarna, Afterpay, Uplift. These are all the companies that offer you these what are called point of sale loans, which is buy now, pay later. You would see it with Air Canada, Delta, United. All of them have something where if you wanted to split your payment in like smaller chunks and pay it over a period of time, you could do that. And if you are a big family of 4 or 5 and traveling, I can see why this can be super lucrative. But the caution was basically as simple as, hey, the fine print has so much going on there that most people don't understand what they're signing up for when they're doing these last minute loans or travel loans, as I call them. Um, so what if your flight cancels, for example? So the cautionary tale in that radio show was basically talking about if your flight cancels or because there's been so much disruption, I guess, because of the accident in Toronto airport earlier in the week, that there's lots of flights that have been canceled. And if you were going to do one of these buy now, pay later kind of loans, then guess what? Your loan payments don't stop while your flight was canceled and you're waiting for a refund to come from the airline. So that if that refund from the airline is going to take them 6 to 8 weeks or more, you are on the hook for making those loan payments because that they are not going to do anything. I mean, upfront for you. Of course, you'll have to call them, chase them, and see if they can put your loan on a hold and things like that. So, anyways, I don't think people in the points community per se would be using this because we are very savvy with our credit card purchases and especially using credit cards that have insurance coverage for flight interruptions, cancellations, and so on and so forth. But I figured it's well worth the time to kind of mention this in case you had friends or family that use that kind of sorry, that use that last minute or sort of pay as you go. I mean, buy now, pay later kind of loans that are provided to you while you are checking out your travel purchase. So, yeah, just caution. Let's talk dynamic pricing because clearly dynamic pricing is here to stay. And if recent Aeroplan announcement about having these set of preferred partners on dynamic pricing is anything to go by, it has really opened up the gates for a future that could include more and more partners as premium preferred partners in that dynamic model. Right now, some of the favorites like Emirates, Etihad, United are all going to be dynamically priced, much like Air Canada Metal was later in a couple of months' time. And all of the sort of regional Canadian airlines will also be first. No, what was the airline? First Air? Yeah, First Air, PAL, Canadian North, and all of those will also be dynamic pricing. So it's here to stay, is basically what I'm trying to say. What are some of the techniques that you would suggest somebody deploy if they're trying to, and we're not talking about the points savvy person, but if you were to tell your friends and family on how to best use their points and try and avoid dynamic pricing through, say, Aeroplan, for example, or Delta or wherever else, United, or any of the American airlines, to be honest. what would your recommendations be? I mean, some of the most basic ones are going to be book as early as possible, perhaps be a little more flexible. Like if you can't get to, for example, I was looking at some flights to Australia and I couldn't find anything out of San Francisco for the dates I was looking at because super expensive. I just happened to also have notifications on for LAX and then realized a lot of availability out of LAX as opposed to out of San Francisco. And I'm sure San Francisco to Australian cities gets availability as well, but not as much as I was seeing LAX to Melbourne, LAX to Brisbane or Sydney and things like that. Um, so what was my point? Yeah, the point was to be flexible, to perhaps not look for a very specific destination. So especially if you're going to say somewhere in Europe, with the kind of train connectivity they have and how reliable and cheap their mode of transportations can be, even if you're flying, say, for example, a Ryanair or whoever else for or taking the train, for example, if you're doing an intermodal kind of thing. Yeah, don't look for London Heathrow. Maybe look for London Gatwick, or not look at London at all. Look at Amsterdam, look at Paris, look at Frankfurt, Munich, other places. So look at the region as opposed to a very specific destination could be one way. I've found more success with Australia with a similar strategy, which is if I constantly look for Brisbane or Sydney, I don't see anything, or whatever I see is like 500,000 points, 400,000 points in business class and whatnot. If I move it to, say, a Melbourne or an Adelaide or a Gold Coast, for example, or Perth or Canberra on the other side of the country, a lot more availability pops up at closer to standard rates, if I can use that term. So flexibility, booking as early as possible, or hey, booking as close in as possible, because some of the partners that may have unsold seats may pop up close in as well. So I guess flexibility in that regard. The other one is reimagine or refocus on the idea of having flexible currency in your portfolio. I know a lot of my sort of near and dear ones here in Canada, because Aeroplan is so easy, they invest heavily into Aeroplan and Aeroplan only, and it's hard to convince them to sort of move out of that partially to invest a little bit more on, say, something like an Amex membership rewards because it's more flexible. But with that comes a whole set of sort of nuance, which is you have to know when to transfer. How long does it take to transfer your points from Amex MR to an Aeroplan, which is instant, to some other program that might take a couple of days to show up and things like that. I think for the points community, one of the biggest strengths is going to be, and I'm talking in the next 5 to 10 years, one of the biggest strength is going to be having your loyalty accounts with different airlines set up and robust enough that you know what your transfer timelines are, and invest more and more into membership rewards, for example, into Chase, if Chase or Capital One points, if you had access to US cards, basically transferable currencies, and then being able to transfer those currencies into some niche loyalty programs. For example, Asia Miles or Silver Fly, Chris Flyer, Chris, whatever, Singapore Airlines' loyalty program, and things like that, because then you sort of really get the habit of, I'm going to move X amount of points. This has to be a planned and intentional thing, of course. I'm going to move and let my 75,000 or 100,000 points sit in that particular program because I'm targeting something very specific from a certain region. And because I've spoken about Australia so much and I've been doing recent searches, the other thing I've realized is a program like Aeroplan is really good at giving you availability of some airlines in some specific regions because they get the access to those seats and availability a lot more than they would get on long hauls. For example, uh, I find I find Singapore Airlines availability in premium cabins on Aeroplan very easily if I'm looking for something within Asia or even Asia to Australia or Australasia, for example, that region. Super easy, plenty of availability, and I've never sort of struggled there. Where it gets tricky is when I start looking for Singapore into North America, North America to Singapore, and things like that. That becomes tricky. But that just goes to show you that more and more in the future, you'll have to deploy multiple programs within that same travel itinerary, which is maybe an aeroplan could be your points of choice for within Asia, Asia to Australia or wherever else you're, or maybe aeroplan is your preferred program for Etihad, for example, maybe in the future if the dynamic pricing is not as crazy as I think it would be, that maybe they become your preferred program for Etihad for short haul to medium haul, going from Abu Dhabi to say somewhere in Europe and whatnot. But American is your program for the long haul Etihad availability and so on and so forth. And they're all part of that same travel that you're trying to do within that within a specific timeline. I think we, as a points community, gone are the days where just Aeroplan could easily build you a round the world trip to the desired destinations and cities that you wanted in a blink of an eye. I think that those days are fleeting past us. And as more and more things become dynamic, as more and more people have access to Aeroplan points, and things are going to become difficult. So I think this approach of breaking down your itinerary into maybe two, three, four programs that'll fund your trip around the world, as opposed to one program doing all of it, is going to be reality if it already isn't your reality. Um, Couple of comments here. Sorry, I've spoken so much, I missed out on your comments here. I used to tell people not to redeem Air Canada points on Air Canada as much, as you are much less likely to get a saver award. So if you're going to Europe, look for United or Lufthansa, for example. The bigger problem I see with partner dynamic awards is my Life Miles is now seeing very little, if any, United or Lufthansa transatlantic premium awards, 100%. And we will see those because let's not forget what Air Canada is or Aeroplan is proposing is they are basically saying this is the future. This dynamic pricing is the future, which basically is going to allow them access to more and more partner awards, which is yay us. At the same time, you'll be paying a lot more points for those kinds of redemptions because you have access to more. So I think that is where we have started, and there's no turning back here on other airlines if they haven't already done so. Will quickly be doing something similar and bring about sort of preferred partners and things like that, and have a dedicated usage of miles for more award space. What that might do is some of the smaller niche programs that we used to love, Life Miles, Alaska, or the others, might not see as much love anymore going forward, is because a lot of the space now has to be shared with, say, an Aeroplan, so we can't share as much with Life Miles, or maybe we do, but things in Aeroplan are so readily available that they get snapped up from there, and the inventory really dries up much faster, which is good for United, good for Aeroplan that they're able to sell more tickets on their metals. But if you have lots of points sitting with somebody like Life Miles, you may or may not see as much award availability and as readily available with Lufthansa specifically. If Lufthansa and them become preferred partners, or they all start sort of grouping up and doing, you know, partnering up beyond the traditional norm, and sharing more and more space with each other, especially between Air Canada, United, Lufthansa, the founding members of Star Alliance. So yeah, good point, Greg. Leon says, in my experience, Amex Canada to Flying Blue takes a couple of days. Stressful when the monthly promo comes out from an origin I like. 100% Leon, great point you made. And that's a great example as well, that if you are waiting for a promo award to come through, and Flying Blue is a great program for that, then you want to be able to move those points and be ready. And that's what I meant, is more and more we'll all have to learn about these timelines. And I think Ricky and a few others do a good job of publishing those timelines as well. I think who else has done it? Maybe Points Guide did it at some point, or one of the other blogs. They put down how much time it takes to transfer from Amex membership rewards to all of these partner airlines, as well as, say, something like a Marriott point being moved to an airline and things like that. So you have to know those. And unfortunately, if it's not an instant thing, then you really have to understand and know what promotions you're looking to target and how much points you're willing to sort of let sit in a particular niche program, so that when something comes up, you're able to use it right off the back, as opposed to having to wait for your points to show up. So yeah, good point, Leon. That's a great example. Um, Iyad said, sorry, Iyad, I forgot your comment here. Iyad says, frankly, I would just avoid those airlines or use other point programs that don't have dynamic pricing. Yeah, I think that is definitely step one is for those of us that can diversify enough that we'll continue to look for programs that don't have dynamic pricing. And if you're able to use them, but I think more and more as Aeroplan develop, I mean, not develops, as Aeroplan matures this idea of dynamic pricing for partner awards, you can get away. I mean, you, the individual, may be able to be savvy enough to do something differently. But think about the typical traveler. Think about all of your friends and family that you sort of are an advisor for. It'll be very difficult to explain why you need to move your points into a Flying Blue or a KrisFlyer or an Asia Miles, and that is a better bang for your buck. They would rather pay a little bit more and just to use it from the Aeroplan ecosystem, and that's the entire idea behind dynamic pricing, right? To make things easier for the membership at a premium cost. Alex says WestJet dollars to position to a gateway and fly partner airlines, except if you want to go to any of the Americas, you will most likely have to fly United or Air Canada unless you can get a gateway that is served by Copa or Avianca. Yeah, Alex is bringing a good point about this art of positioning flights. So yeah, positioning flights is going to be a big one, and I think we'll continue to deploy those same techniques like we do right now. And like if I can't find something out of a Toronto or a Montreal or heck out of Ottawa, I'm immediately looking at sort of Boston, Chicago, New York area, and all of those. And then I am sort of quote unquote happy to pay a little bit more in points and money to position myself there. So to Alex's point, Alex is pointing out that have a primary, not a primary, have a secondary program where you have enough invested that when these things come up and you have to make these positioning flights possible, that those points are readily available for you to use them. And WestJet dollars are a great way to do it if you have access to those on a regular basis. Yeah, it says I flew Emirates once on points before they removed the guardrails and went full dynamic and didn't again cause it. It's always crazy pricing on Aeroplan. I would rather pay using Emirates' own program. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what's going to happen is that next phase of a lot of this points community at the expense of repeating myself is going to become how many of these points can I move from a transferable currency into a non-primary program, like an Emirates program or Etihad guest miles or wherever else, if you're specifically targeting premium redemptions from these programs. Tommy's here. Tommy says, what's everybody's favorite program for long haul from North America to Asia? I'll tell you this, Tommy. Alaska is my favorite program, very closely followed by both Asia Miles and KrisFlyer. Singapore, Cathay, Alaska generally. Alaska would be my first and go-to. American is not bad, but I've used Alaska quite a bit. Although Alaska points are difficult to earn, as are American points, to be honest. But I'm hoping that this entire Porter Alaska becomes a thing so that, I can easily put all of my points that I earned through these positioning flights with Porter and whatnot towards Alaska and then redeem them, or vice versa, redeem Alaska points for Porter. But yeah, Alaska, I'm a big fan of them. They do a pretty solid job of having options available through Japan Airlines or through various other Alaska and partners from North America into Asia. But more and more, I mean, for a long time now, Cathay's Asia Miles has been rock solid for me, as well as Singapore's KrisFlyer, if you were looking for a very specific redemption. But if others have options to share, please do. Aeroplan, unfortunately, going into Asia has always been very difficult. I struggle to find EVA. I'll find EVA every now and then on Aeroplan. I recently had booked EVA for 87,000, eventually ended up canceling them and rebooking with somebody else. And I forget, I think I ended up going with Etihad because I found some availability and booked Etihad going the other way into Asia. Oh no, I booked Emirates. This was the Bangkok thing. Yeah, I ended up booking Emirates. But I found EVA every now and then readily available on Aeroplan at around that 87,000 points, but not consistently at standard fares to say that that would be my go-to program. Grimsley says Alaska doesn't get a lot of Japan Airlines availability these days. You're right. I was thinking pre whatever this new One World business, but I haven't really actively searched for Japan Airlines on Alaska. But again, Cathay tends to be really good with that. I haven't actually played around in Japan's own program, ANA, of course, if Star Alliance is what you're looking for, then ANA's own program is really good for that. Tommy says Cathay is nice, but the devaluation wasn't nice. We'll be flying it later this year, though, coming from Asia to North America. Yeah, and I think I find Asia coming into North America is a little bit easier than North America going into Asia. Feel free to chime in for those that do that segment a lot, if that's true for you as well. But every time I've searched, I've found easier, or I found availability a lot easier from Asia into North America than the other way around. Grimsley says the airlines are competing hard for Seattle Taipei. I use whatever programs that have availability. FP for CI, DL for DL, FP for C, Flying Blue for what's CI? China? I can't think. China Airlines, yeah. China Airlines, Delta for Delta, etc. Yes, Alaska doesn't release JAL F, and we've known this for a while now. I think, in fact, wasn't it Sash or somebody that mentioned it a couple of streams ago? But yeah, good reminder, Grimsley, for sure. It took them a little while to understand that, oh, it's not enough to have my points sitting in, say, an Aeroplan and WestJet dollars, and those are my primary and secondary, very static way of thinking. And then their way of evolution would be, oh, I need to have membership rewards points, and that's where my points should sit until I've found availability or understood the patterns. I think the next step, like I said, at the expense of repeating, is going to be further diversification, which is bring those flexible points, understand the transfer windows, transfer X amount of points, and let them sit in a program that you know you are absolutely going to redeem out of. And that's when you'll redeem. So you might have a small chunk of points sitting in Alaska. You might have a small chunk of points sitting in, I don't know, Asia Miles, something sitting in Delta, like, you know. So I think that's the next sort of thing that we'll be doing as a points community, is getting used to this idea of not having large balances of Amex membership rewards sitting there. We'll find ways to move smaller chunks of these points into niche programs and letting them sit there as your plans execute, as availability comes through. To the point that somebody was, remember when somebody said Flying Blue promo rewards come through at the start of each month. So you want to be able to have X number of points in there and be ready for it in case your premium route comes through on a discounted price. Yeah, great points, folks. Great conversation. I really didn't think that we would had this robust a discussion around avoiding dynamic pricing. So great data points. Thank you so much. Let's close this one out. We are 9:30 on a Friday night. I hope, folks, you have a lovely weekend coming up. Have a restful night. Until the next time, folks, have a good one. Take care. Good night.